Hi friends, Tiffany here. Welcome to my quilting life. Are you ready for a fun, quick, easy sew with, well, leftover pieces from something else? Well, I am, so let's get started. For today's fun, quick, and easy sew, you need some jelly roll strips. And not just any strips, these are the unused strips from making other projects that use jelly roll strips. So here I have 13 strips of a fabric line, and we're going to have some fun with them. The next thing you're going to need, there we are with that whole leftover thing, is some batting. Yep, this is just a leftover chunk from the bottom. Yep, the bottom of a quilt. When I trim quilts, I always have this, at least 20 inches wide by however long or wide the quilt is at the bottom. I always have a big chunk left. So this piece just happens to be cut nicely, as you can see, cut nicely at 18 inches by, I think it's 42 inches in width. So there's a big chunk, and this I am using an 80-20. This is 80-20 batting, and that's what I'm going to use. Again, it's 18 inches, and it's like 42 inches long. The next thing is, when you have fabric left over, again, I cut out the things I needed for something, and I had a leftover chunk of a selvage to selvage. And you want to guess how many inches this is? 18 inches. Isn't that perfect? So I had a half a yard left by the width of fabric. So this is the width of fabric by a half a yard. And that is really all we need besides some thread and a sewing machine for today's quilt as you go simple, easy table runner video. So let's get situated and start making our simple, easy quilt as you go table runner. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to grab some basting spray. I either have Dritz or some other brand. I have to check to make sure it even sprays. Oh, it does. Okay, good. So this one has, sometimes these little nozzles get caked up, and if they do, just pop it off and take a pin to it, your sewing pins. Take a pin to it, poke it through, and yank out all the yuckiness that builds up. So I'm just going to use some basting spray. And then we're going to take our backing fabric, which is our 18-inch by 43-inch or so fabric, and I am going to put that wrong side up on my ironing board here, and I'm going to press it, and hopefully you don't wiggle too much because I don't have you on a different stand today. So I'm just going to press it. Stand swap. I noticed you guys were wiggling too much, and I know that that is not good. So I'm going to press it as flat and flat as flat can flatness get. How many times can I say the word flat? Let's get this nice and flat. Once you have your backing fabric nice and flat, we're going to take our batting and we're going to lay this on here. And I'm going to put it pokey side down this way. Pokey side down. And look, it's bigger. So if this is like 43 inches, this is longer. I don't even know how big. But I'm going to adjust it all to one side. So it's going to start on this side over here. And then I'm going to adjust it all to this side, this way. Smooth it all out. And since it is scrap batting, I do need to make sure that there's no dark threads left on it because it was scrap. All right, so I'm going to flatten it out. It's on both ends. Everything looks good. I'm just going to go ahead and peel this back, and half at a time, I'm going to put some basting spray. Just like this. I'm not putting a lot, just coating it good, but not heavily. And then I'm going to, stinky stuff. I'm going to roll it like this. I'm keeping that back nice and flat. There we go. And then, once that's smoothed out, just going to flip up the bottom side and do that side. Same thing, just going to put my basting spray on here. Just a light coat. You can see it when it's on there. And then we're going to smooth this side down. Just like this. And the basting spray can be peeled up and put back down if it tends to get any kind of imperfections or wrinkles in it. So I'm just smoothing it out. So if you were to actually quilt as you go and do blocks, this is pretty much what you would do if you're going to be quilting all of your blocks. You just use some basting spray. You can use the powder. They do make a powder. Tons of different brands do it. I have some Free Fuse. It's just a semi-permanent fusible powder. So you would put the powder on and then you would iron it on. So you can use powder if you have powder, or you can use spray if you have spray, or you can just use pins. But I wouldn't want pins on this due to the fact that we are actually adding our pieces directly onto this. Okay, so once I have it fused on that way, I actually flip it this direction so that my fabric is right side up. And what I do is I go over it with the iron to keep it even flatter than it was. So that way this is like so flat and perfect. And that is how I do this part. All right. So we're ready to start our quilt as you go with our leftover jelly roll strips. Let's take this over to the sewing machine. So before we go to the sewing machine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these strips, and on the fold, I'm going to take a pair of scissors and snip them in half. So I'm just going to slide my scissors in between and split all these strips in half because I'm working with 18 inches wide of my backing. Since it's 18 inches wide, I only need half of a strip to do this. And wow, these are hard to get in the middle of these. Like, is there a special trick that I don't know to get my scissors in there? My goodness. All right, let's fast forward through this. All right, so they are all cut. Now I actually want to lay them out in the order that I want to sew them. So what I'm going to do is take this right here, because this is the width. This is my actual quilt that we're making. This is my table runner quilt. I'm going to take my strips and I'm going to put them in a nice order. So I'm just going to first of all separate into two piles so that I can equally use my strips just like this. And I'm going to put them in an order of which I think looks good. So here we go, separating them, separating away, making two piles. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, I know, I'm weird. Almost done. Almost done. Here we go. Here's my two piles. For now, I'm just going to stick one pile out of the way. So they're not needed at this moment. I'm going to start by putting a blue. So here on our piece, all right, here we are. We're going to take and put these in our pleasing order, and we're going to watch out for the selvage. Now I can go as far as right here because this doesn't have a really thick selvage on it. So I'm going to say, ooh, I want this piece here, and then I want to put yellow next, and I'm going to like lay them on top of each other a little bit by 1/4 of an inch or so, just because I want to know how many I can fit. Let's put this pretty purple next. So I'm just kind of laying them over by 1/4 of an inch or so, just to get a general idea of how many pieces I'm going to use. Let's put this pretty blue next. And don't ask me the fabric line. I didn't have the packaging left. It's been a long time. So I kind of can't tell you what this fabric line is. Let's put this one next. Could probably put it in radiating color, but mixing it up seems good. So again, I'm laying them over by like 1/4 of an inch. Let's put the purple, let's put the yellow next. Just so I know how many pieces I need to put. Right here. Let's put this yellow next. Come on. And this purple. Oh, let's move it down. Let's put this purple first. And I'm going to slide the whole thing down a little. And since I'm glued, my backing is really still nice and good. Let's put this purple next. Then we'll put this blue. And this purple. Okay, I don't like that order. See, this is the cool part about playing with your strip pieces. Let's start with some blues like this. So I'm going to start with blue. Then I'm going to go to this blue. I'm going to grab this blue. Actually, let's put this blue first. Then this blue. Then we're going to go to these yellows after the blue. Ooh, that looks good. Yes, I like that. Let's go to the yellows now. We have a solid yellow right here. So let's put this first, because I started with a solid blue. Then I did the wreaths. And I probably don't have an equal amount of all these colors, but, you know, we're going to pretend. Then we have little yellow flowers. White. Ooh, I like this. This is good. This is good. We're doing good. And then this one. And then my solid purple, I'm going to consider this one right here, because we transition into the purple now. So blue transformed into this, which transforms into the purple, which is pretty darn awesome. I have enough pieces. That's good. All right. And then what we're going to do is, how much space did that take up? Why did I grab a small ruler? Let's just line it up over here and see. And this is just a guess. So it took up 29 inches. If I slide this down some, we're going to take and start with blue again, like this. Let's see how many more we can get. I don't think we're going to get the whole thing. Then this blue again. Then which blue is next? This flowery one. We'll see how we can do this. I'm just going to kind of like pretend for now. After that flowery one is the big flower. See how far we can go. I end about right here. Yeah, that's not going to fit all of them. Then the dark blue. And then it goes to the yellow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some pieces. I'm going to remove this dark blue. So I don't want to use this dark blue. And I don't want to use this yellow. Let's see where that gets me now. If I pull out all 4 of those pieces. Let's start with this. Down here at the end, we're going to do this all over again. I'm just going to move them down now. See if I can fit them all. Again, I'm just laying them over about a 1/4 inch over. And what I'm going to do is start this end off exactly the same. See if I can do that. Let's find out where my selvage is. It's right there. And then we had this. Okay, so I'm going to put it in fast forward while I reconfigure my pieces here. Okay, so I have decided on the order that I want them to go. Now, right here, this last purple might not make it because of the way I laid these, but I am using my walking foot and I don't have a seam guide. So if I get over a 1/4 inch of a seam, I guess that's okay. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to stack these now in the order that I want to sew them. So I'm going from blue into purple. Blue, yellow, purple, both sides. I'm going to start sewing them on and I'm going to show you how to quilt as you go. So now I just need to stack them. All right, it is time to do some quilt as you go. So I have my scissors handy. All of this is ready. I'm going to take it rolled up and put it under my foot right here for a moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my first strip, and I'm going to line it up where it needs to go. So if it's starting up there at the top, I'm going to line it up at the top. I'm going to make sure it's away from the selvage. The rest of the way down. Just like this. And I have my walking foot on. So a walking foot is going to be what I use. My first strip is on here. It's nice and flat, okay? Now I'm going to take my second strip and I'm going to line it up on top of that first strip, right sides together at the top, all the way down. And what I'm going to do, since this is a quilt as you go, so I'm going to start my 1/4 inch seam right here, just like you would sew anything, except it's quilting it down as we go. So let me change my stitch length, and here we go. So I'm just going to follow it all the way down. I'm keeping this folded up and in the throat space. My walking foot is walking everything through at the same exact time. I'm going to find out where my end is, which is right here. I'm going to break thread and come up right here for a second, and I'm going to trim the excess of these two away. Just like that. So I trim them away. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I tossed them away. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to press this back. I'm going to just finger press it for the moment, for just 2 seconds, but I'm actually going to take this over to the iron now and actually press it back with the iron, which should not ruin anything. So I'm just going to come over here to my little ironing station and press it back. That way it's super flat. Bring it back over here, grab my next strip, line it right sides together on top of my previous strip, just like this. And then I'm going to sew this one on, same procedure. And I have to be careful because I have stuff on my table right here that's kind of catching. So make sure there's nothing in front of the mouth of your machine that's going to impede on your little bundle here. And then I'm going to cut this before I get to the end, which is right here. And everything is going to get trimmed up as well. So there's that. And what I'm going to do is pull it away. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press it back, just like this. And I'm going to take this to the iron and press it. And as you can see, so far with just the 3 pieces on here, if I turn it over, you can see that it is quilted as I go. Now I could have chose to use a green thread to contrast on, to blend into this, but I'm using white, which is contrasting, so you're going to see all of my quilting on here at the same time, because again, we're quilting as we go. All right, let's line up that next piece. So I'm just going to line it up right here on the end, line it up the rest of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and just pre-cut it off now because that's where the end is, right there. Toss that piece out of the way, bring it over to the machine, same thing. I'm quilting it as I go. So I'm just laying it on here. I'm attempting a 1/4-inch seam. And I'm also attempting to stitch straight. Okay, so again, I'm just going to take it over and press it. And I'm just going to keep doing that and unrolling as I quilt as I go. Okay, so I'm still repeating that same process, but now I'm rolling up both sides to just keep the bulk under wraps. So again, I'm just sliding my piece under using a walking foot here, and I'm just sewing down as I go. It's quilting the quilt. Or table runner, because technically that's what I'm making, is a table runner. And you can finger press as you go as well. They do stick to the batting, so that also helps keep everything nice and flat. But I'm choosing to iron, and you can too if you want it to be super flat along the way. So like I said earlier, you can just finger press it back. It works that way too, and you can just flatten it out and it'll stick to your batting. But I really like just taking that extra second and going over to the iron and pressing it flatter. And just like that, there's my table runner so far. So it's from here to here at this point with my 13 strips minus a couple. It is 36, 37, 38 inches. Now I realized that I could have put another purple and more of the blues, and I actually have this much left right here on the end. So instead of wasting that, and instead of wasting all these cutoffs right here, I had an idea to take all these pieces right here and then use these for binding. Yeah, that'll work for binding. So I'll use those for binding. I have decided to take these pieces and cut them into 2.5-inch squares, and I'm going to piece them together in this order right here of my table runner, in this lovely order, and I'm going to put a strip of these in there, and I'm going to piece them, get them in there, and if I have to do it two ways, so I will go from the purple down to here and then opposite. I think that'll fit. Let's see if that's 18 inches. That's about 15, 16, 17, 18. Yep, that'll give me plenty. So I'm going to cut these down, and I'm going to get 2 strips, enough for back here. Ooh, and then end it with this on the other side or something, or just use that towards binding. But I'm going to cut these down into 2.5-inch squares, piece those 2.5-inch squares together, and they're going to sit right here on the end. I think that'll look really cool. It'll give it a really finished look. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all those up real quick. I'm going to move my table runner out of the way and my ironing surface out of the way and trim all these to 2.5-inch squares. So this may take a minute. I'm going to put it in fast forward. Okay, so now that I got these pieces made, I want to show you that you can nest your seams also while sewing some strip units that are pieced like this. So what I'm going to do, so that this is an added bonus here for you, so I'm going to attach one of these first, So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, you know what I should do? I should rip off this first color right here. That's what I should do. First color, and it's the right size it needs to be. And then on this side, it would be this one or that one. Let's see where they land. So it would be the last one. Yep. Oh, but I like that flower. Oh man, it could just be a hangover. You know what? That's what I'm going to do. Let me put it back together real quick and make it a hangover. I know I shouldn't have done that, but you know, I make up my mind, change my mind so many times. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and finger press that back again. Just like that, and put this on. I'm just going to go with it. So I'm going to attach it up here, and it's going to hang over a bit on both ends, but that's okay. I'm going to start right here, and hanging over about right there. And I'm going to start sewing. Now I'm going to sew this one on first, and then the other one, we're going to nest those seams. So I'm sewing it with my 1/4 inch seam or thereabouts. I'm pretty much quilting it on. It's going to hang over on the end, but that's okay. So this is a quilt as you go. So I'm going to go ahead and press this real quick back, same as I've been doing. And then we're going to grab that next one, and I am going to place it on there, but instead of it going this direction, we're going to make it go this direction. So I have the opposite end up here. And what I'm going to do is just the same as nesting any other seam on any other type of piecing, except I'm quilting as you go here. So I'm going to take this first seam, and you can feel with your finger that it's nesting. So I'm going to stick it under there and go, yep, that's the way I want to start it. Stitch to that first seam. Come to that next one, you can feel it. You don't even need to pin these. Stitch to the seam, next one, you can feel, and you can even see if you peel it back that they're right on top of each other. If the pieces were sewn with that same 1/4 inch seam, then everything should line up beautifully. We're just going to go to this next one, just like that, stitching to it. Nest it up, stitch to it. And I'll show you how well it turns out. And one more. And then straight off. Just like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and press this. And we're going to come over with the camera, and I'm going to show you, which you can even see just right here. They are beautifully nested. This is even better than when I piece regularly. So let me press that. And to end it off, I'm going to put this strip on this far side right here, just to end my piece and cover what I need to cover. All right, so I'm going to slide this under. I'm just going to put this last and final piece on here, and then I'm going to show you with the camera. Or not. Broke thread. Give me a second to get it rethreaded. So here's the table runner. Look at these seams. How nicely they nest, even when you are quilting as you go. Look at that. Beautiful all the way. Now I know my table runner is going to look quite odd because it's different. So here's the whole thing. Here it is in full. As you can see, it looks kind of wonky, but that's because we got to trim it down. And you can see my end here. So if you really wanted, you can have your whatever on this side, you know, and then this side is where you can put your little teacups. It doesn't have to be, you know, like, I don't know, it's just fun. It's different. But the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it around this way. And it's already quilted, so we can't go wrong. It's already quilted. Everything's good. So there's nothing left to do. Now I will add a top stitch on both sides of every seam because that's what I like to do. But for now, I'm going to trim it to size so that you can see how easy it is to trim it. Right here, just going to go to this jelly roll piece right here, and I'm going to line my seam up with the 2-inch line on the end of that jelly roll piece. And yes, I will be cutting off some of that jelly roll, but that's perfectly fine. So there's trash off one end because I went all the way to the selvage. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to carefully try to finagle around the camera. We're going to try to do a nice straight line by using the straight lines on the ruler. So I'm going to use all the lines on the ruler. I'm going to make sure that they're all lining up. There we go. We're going to make this first cut right there. Slide it out of the way. Come down. Going to line that bottom straight up right here. And then I'm also going to make sure that I line up all the seams. Right here, right there. That looks good. That looks good. Just like that. One more time. And I'll probably have to trim it one more time too because it looks like it went wonky. So I'm going to have to straighten it out one more time. And that's not the cutting that went wonky. That's the piecing of all these pieces. All right, so I'm going to cut this side nice and straight. It might not be wonky. It might just be the way that I am here in my room. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, so it lines up on the 2-inch mark on that purple right there. And it's lining up right here. Okay, so it wasn't crooked. It just looked kind of crooked. All right, I'm going to go this way now. It just looked crooked. So if I start out with a nice straight line here at the bottom, right there, making sure that all these are straight, and they are. Make that cut. Come on down. Line it all up. Lining up those seams. Lining them up. Like I said, it kind of looks crooked, but it's not. That's so weird. Right there. Oh, that's the edge. I might have to trim off a little bit more than this because I came right to the edge, the very, very, very edge. And I doubt that my backing fabric goes to that edge. Nope, it does not. We need to trim off another 1/2 inch, about. So I'm going to straighten it up. Everything's nice and straight. Let's see, is it going to the cut? Yes, it is. Okay, so it's going through the backing fabric now. Line it up. Again, I'm just taking about 1/4 to 1/2 inch off. Everything is still aligned. And this time I'm getting that backing fabric. That end is aligned. Right there. Let's see. It kind of doesn't look straight to me. So I do this. My binding is not going to cover that end either, so I need to trim it just a little bit more. This side is straight. That side is straight. We're going to straighten this up right here, because my table runner got wonky. Hey, and that happens. Just straighten it. Straighten things up. I'm lining it up with that one edge. I'm also lining it up with my sewing lines right here. My quilting lines. There we go. Now it's straight. Let's do this side. Making sure. Straight there. And it's lined up with my sewing lines. There we go. And then last but not least, we're gonna straighten up this. So I'm gonna take it down to 1 3/4 right here on this edge, so that the other one can be the same. And then my table runner, 1 3/4. That should allow me to have perfect end right there, right there, right there. How's that look? Oh yeah, perfect. There's my table runner. Now the only thing left is to bind it. So I have these 4 pieces, and I think I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple more strips of some purple maybe from my 2.5-inch strip bin, or white. White would go good too. I think I'm going to do white. No, purple. See, I can't ever make up my mind, but I'm going to grab a couple strips, probably 2 strips. Yeah, 2 for this side, 2 for that side. Yep, 2 strips. So I'm going to go ahead and grab 2 strips of a purple. Hopefully I have one. Be right back. So I just spent the good part of an hour digging through my fabric room to try to find a chunk of fabric that was anywhere close to these fabrics. And the funny thing is, I don't have any at all. So I have decided the green is the green part of this whole quilt. So I took 3 strips of that, and that will be the binding. And guess what? That will be that finish right here. I'm just going to fold it over, as you can see, and it'll bring out all the greens in my table topper. So I'm going to go ahead and sew my 3 strips, because my table runner is 17 by, I'll tell you, let's see, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. So my table runner is 43 by 17. And I'm going to go ahead now and bind it. My 43 by 17 should only need 3 2.5-inch strips to bind it. So I'm going to go ahead and bind this thing, and then it'll be done. So I don't know whether to do that on camera or not, but since I'm showing you the whole thing, we might as well. So I'm going to go ahead now and make these binding strips. Let's go to the machine. I'm not sure if you, the person watching this, have made binding before, but this is how it goes. Find the end of your strip. Now there's a selvage on here. I do want to bypass that selvage. I'm going to grab the end of another strip, and I'm going to place that. I'm going to put it over the selvage just like this, and I'm going to sew from this corner to this corner right here. So I'm going to turn it, drop my foot, and I'm going to sew from that corner using my seam tape right here to this other corner. Now I'm going to flip this over and find that other end. There we are. I'm going to grab my next strip, And I'm going to put that right sides together. Again, I'm going to keep my selvage out towards the sides and on the top, giving you a clear view of your corner to corner sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and sew from this corner down to that corner. And if I was making a lot of binding, I would 100% just keep flipping it, adding the next one, flipping it, adding the next one, so on and so forth. The next thing I'm going to do is snip these apart. And right here, you can do this with a rotary cutter or you can do it with scissors. I'm going to go ahead now and trim off a 1/4 inch seam or thereabouts of a 1/4 inch seam. So that's what I'm doing. And I trim away the selvage because I keep these corners for a different project that I've been slowly working on over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. I'm just going to get rid of the selvage, just like that. Cutting it off. And I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just like this. So there's my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm just going to take this over to the iron, and I am going to press everything. Not only am I going to press that seam, but I'm going to press this in half exactly, just like this, in half to make my binding. So I'm just going to run it down the iron, pressing it in half, run it down the iron, press it in half, so on and so forth until the whole thing is pressed in half. I'm going to save you on that ironing part because, you know, this video is starting to get long. But I'm going to go over and do that, and I'll be right back. All right, it took me 3 minutes. I don't even think it was a full 3 minutes to press this binding because it's not a lot of binding. Again, it's just pressed in half, just in half. I'm going to go ahead at this point and take the selvage off of the one end. And then I'm going to grab my quilt top. And I prefer to put my binding on to the back first and then wrap it to the front. So I'm going to go ahead, come around here to the back, and I'm going to put my binding right here. I'm also going to use my magnetic seam guide at a 1/4 inch. I'm going to lay my binding on here, and I'm going to come and leave about, I don't know, 5 to 10 inch tail. I leave it kind of close, but you can leave a bigger tail if you want. Just going to go ahead and change my stitch length to about a 2.5 for this step. Back stitch right there. And all I'm going to do is sew my binding on. So I'm just sewing it on just like this. I'm not using the walking foot for this step. I prefer not to. We're coming to an end here, and I have a seam that's right here. I don't like my seam to land in the corner, so usually I check first where that seam is going to land, but this time I got lucky and it didn't land in a corner. So I'm going to stitch up right here to about a 1/4 inch away. Oh, that's more than a 1/4 inch away. Let's go back a stitch. Back a stitch. Right there. Turn it to the side and stitch off the edge at a 45-degree angle. Then I'm going to lift my binding. Usually I stop here and just back stitch and then, you know, do this the same exact way. But lately I've been stitching off the edge because it's been kind of seems quicker almost than trying to stop exactly at a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to line my binding straight with the edge of my quilt, make a 45-degree miter, put it back onto itself, lining up my fold with the edge of my quilt, just like this. So my fold is at that edge. I'm just going to hold it in place, turn the whole project, and come in from the edge. And then I do a little back stitch. Then I stitch down my next side. And I'm going to repeat that process of the corner when I get to it. So I'm going to stop about a 1/4 inch away, turn it to the side, angling off the edge, and sewing off the edge. I find that a little bit faster than back stitching and, you know, so on and so forth. So I just literally sewed off that edge right there into the corner of the quilt. So then I line it up. I know a lot of other people do the binding that way every time. I don't do that exactly every time. Sometimes I change my ways in the middle of everything. Here we are making our corner, and I realize that my thread, because it got caught on the quilt top, has come unthreaded again. So let's just rethread that real quick. I, for the life of me, cannot use the threader that's built onto my machine. It does not like me. Oh my goodness. I tangled it as I was trying to thread it. Yep, it happens. All right. And make sure that this fold is lined up in the corner. Hold it in place. Put it under my foot. And sew it on. Then bring my project to my lap and sew down this side. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this real quick. By the way, this is my real-time sewing. I can continuously sew, stop a 1/4 inch from the edge, pivot, sew off, do my thingy real quick right here with the corner. It kind of gets easier every corner you do, but there's only 4 corners, so it goes quick. Back stitch, tack this side on. Come right here, 1/4 inch. I went too far, back stitch. It doesn't bother it to have that stitch there. I just give it a little tug and it pulls it pretty straight. I'm going to fold it onto itself. And we had 3 strips, so that was exactly the amount I needed for a 17 by, I think it was 44 or 45 inch. All right, so I'm going to sew down this. You can see that I have my tails right here. I had exactly enough fabric. I'm going to stop about right here. Back stitch. And to make this easy for all of you out there, this is the easiest way possible. I'm going to go ahead and cut off right here a nice straight line. I'm going to use this piece that I just cut off, and I'm going to lay it on top of here at the start of where I cut, and then here's the bottom. I'm going to line my scissors up with that, slide this through the scissors. This is easier than lining up a 2.5 inch. Oops, that was the wrong direction, Tiffy. Wrong direction. Look at that. Why did I do that? We're going to have a seam right here, and it's going to be a side-to-side seam. Check it out. I don't know why I just did that. That was me attempting to do whatever. Okay, let's do this again. See, I have a straight seam here, and I'm going to have a diagonal seam as well. There's me trying to film. Stuff happens while I'm filming. It's going to get cut off anyway, so I'm going to do that again. This way, it's in the correct direction. So if you cut off this much, make sure you turn it so that your fold is going side to side in front of you, because I just had that little mess up, but that's okay. So I have a little seam right here. I'm just going to open that seam up, even though just in case it's not going to be in, I'm pretty sure of it's going to end up behind it. I'm going to stick this piece right here in front of me, and I'm going to bring this one up to it, right sides together. So I didn't do anything. It's just like this. I opened it up, and I'm going to put it on top of this piece right here. And I usually don't pin. I line it up and hold it. And I'm going to go ahead now and stick this under right here at the corner of this piece. Take a couple stitches, line up that bottom, and then hold everything nice and flat, lining up that side and this bottom. Okay, I sewed from corner to corner, and as you can see, I'm only going to have a tiny, tiny bit of that straight seam next to my thing, and that's okay. Why? Because I don't care. So I'm going to cut it off because I know that it's flat, and make sure it's flat first, and it is. I'm going to cut off my 1/4 inch seam allowance, just like that. All that can go there. Then I'm going to go ahead and finger press this to one side or the other. And then line it back up and sew it back down. So lining up my 1/4 inch seam guide again, changing my stitch to a 2.5, and it's sewn on. Yay! So now we're going to flip it to the front side. And as you can see, I have a little tiny seam right there. But guess what? It doesn't matter because it's going to be hidden once I start sewing this. So now we're flipped to the front. I'm going to change my stitch to a 3. I'm going to move that seam guide. I'm going to bring my bobbin thread up so that I can find my beginning. I'm going to take my back and pull that binding around to the front, nice and tight. And then I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the binding, not from the edge of the quilt, from the edge of the inner side of the binding. So I take a first couple stitches, and then all I do is use my finger. I pull it from around the back and use my finger to draw it along. And now I sew my binding on pretty quickly, like I'm very, very used to it, like super very used to it. Oh, and I forgot to do that secondary stitching. I was going to do more quilting on this, but looks like I'm just binding it instead, which is fine by me. All right, here's where that extra seam is. Guess what? It's laying flat. Stitch right over it, coming over here to my corner, making sure everything is pushed out. And here's my corner. I have it pulled out, flattened out on the top, and I'm just going to make a little crease here and flip that up onto itself, making a 45-degree miter, stitching right up to it. I take a couple little tiny stitches, a front and back stitch when I get into that corner, pivot, front and back stitch, and then leave that corner and continue on stitching. And then again, like I said, I'm pretty quick about this. I don't mean to hurry. I don't mean to get things done fast. It's just me and how I sew. So here we are, another corner. Again, it's just right here. It's flipped down. There's a little 45-degree crease right here. Just going to pull from the bottom, flip it over to the top. Those two corners match perfectly. Stitch right up to it, into it, and out of it. Pivot. Oh, I ran out of bobbin. No wonder it was not stitching. I was like, what the heck is going on here? 2 seconds to change out a bobbin. All right. The thread made a little knot under there. Drive me crazy. Again, this is just real-time sewing. This is how fast I typically do binding. The only thing is with bigger quilts, I do have to adjust more, but this is how it's done almost 90% of the time. Unless the quilt is humongous, so I have to slow down, or it's going into a show and I want to be perfect. This is why I prefer to machine bind. Could you imagine me how long it would take to do this by hand for me? I would be stressed out. It'd be like, nope, not doing it. I just can't do it by hand. This little piece at the end of the quilt is so different from any of my strip pieces by adding that down here on this. I should have quilted it though, because it would have, I don't know, it seems good. But I was distracted. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of my original starting thread. I'm gonna go to the back and get rid of it back there. That way I have a nice clean edge when I come up here right now. I'm gonna match myself up with where I started, back stitch, lift my needle, pull it away, and then cut that thread. Ta-da! Here's my quilt top. Quilt, because it is a full quilt now. Look at that. All right, let's take a look at it. I'm not sure if the whole thing is going to fit in the frame, but we will see. Here it is, right there. I think that green being the binding is perfect. Look at that. Yes. So the whole thing is not fitting in the frame, but here it is. So you can see the colors come into this being the center, and it was the center until I added this little pieced area right here at the end, which is super adorable. The only thing I should have not did was add that last piece and just keep it with these two, because there is a slight sliver of it on this end and a slight, oops, here we go, sliver of it on that end. I mean, it's okay. I lost my little flowers at the end, but look at that. So it's a little different than normal. It is, we're going to measure it right now, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42 and a half by 42 and a half by 17 still. So there it is. There's the back. You can see that it is quilted. The thread actually does blend in from far away. It's hard to tell. Look at that. Super adorable and definitely different than most table runners that are quilt as you go. So there it is. Fully done. Looks good. I love it. So that is how you quilt as you go. Super easy, and that was what, 2 hours of total work since I've been in this room. So that's not bad. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to quilt as you go. Again, it's so easy, so easy. You can have this together, any of you, especially if you do strips and strings. This can be done by any of you in 2 hours, maybe 3. And you get a nice, big, beautiful table runner. You could also go through after the fact, which I forgot that part because I was going to stitch on both sides of every ditch to give it more definition, but I didn't do it because I forgot, because I was doing this, filming it for you. But you can also practice your free motion quilting skills after the fact. So after you get, before the binding, after you get everything sewn on there, before you trim it, free motion quilt. And all that space, which will hide your straight lines of your quilting as you go, it'll hide that fact, and you will learn how to free motion quilt all at the same time, or you can just practice free motion quilting in each row on its own. But the fact is, you can have so much fun with these little projects. You can quilt as you go placemats, you can quilt as you go table runners, you can quilt as you go with like pot holders or any of that. If you have a block, turn a block into it, that's quilting the block like it would be just a little quilt. But hey, when you do it like this, you could actually make long blocks and hook all those blocks together and then sew them onto your backing, as in quilting as you go. Or you can take and make a bunch of panels like this, and then instead of binding, you would take a piece of fabric and you hook the two of them together on the front and the back, and each one you stack them and add them, stack them and add them. And there you go, the other quilt as you go, which I have not done a video for, and well, I'm not going to because I don't quilt that way, but these ones are easy to show you how to do. So any beginner can do this. Have fun, enjoy, make it your own, and don't forget to share in the Facebook group if you're joined on that, and share with the projects that you're making with your quilt as you go, and or you can hashtag Tiffany's Quilting Life on Instagram so that I could see the projects that you are working on. So have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.